Hi there, welcome back to our tutorial classes on YouTube brought to you by the O3 Schools JAMB app. And in our today's class, we're looking at chapter 4 of the Lekki Headmaster. And it is titled A Case of Visa Denied. So let's quickly run through the chapter. Now, life went on as Mr. Beppo, remember the protagonist of the book was Mr. Beppo, the principal of Stardom Schools, and he was about to relocate to the United Kingdom. While he was making his preparations and arrangement to relocate, one night his phone rang as he was about to say his night prayers before bed, and it was the parent of one of the students in the school, Mrs. Ignatius. Mr. Beppo believed that Mrs. Ignatius was taking advantage of the friendliness he usually extended to parents at the school. She had turned him into her confidant, discussing all sorts of personal issues with him, which he wasn't comfortable with. This time, she had called to complain about her husband's misbehavior. He left home and had ordered her to leave the house as well. Now, a little backstory on Mrs. Ignatius. Her husband, Mr. Ignatius Ibe, he was a manager in an oil firm, and though comfortable, they were living a relatively comfortable life here in Nigeria, but he recently decided to relocate for the sake of his children. He wanted his children to grow up in a better environment, a saner climate, like he called it. So during the process, while they were preparing to relocate, they had to undergo DNA tests for their children, and the DNA test revealed that one of the children did not belong to Mr. Ignatius, and in anger, he asked Mrs. Ignatius with that child to leave his house. So Mrs. Ignatius was calling Mr. Beppo to listen to what he thought about the issue. She wanted to know if he thought Mr. Ignatius would get over it. Now, Beppo had no answer for her because his relocation was what was prominent in his mind. He hoped that the relocation would give him respite from situations such as this, personal issues that had nothing to do with him. He hoped that the experiences he had gathered would be relevant to him in his next position or his new position he will be taking up in the UK. Also, he hoped to have enough time to write his biography. Mr. Beppo wanted to write his professional biography, and one story he was definitely going to include was the story of Mr. Ayesoro. Mr. Ayesoro was the government teacher at Stardom Schools, but the student had nicknamed him Mr. Owala because of his deep and prominent facial tribal marks. One student saw him, Bibi. Bibi saw Mr. Ayesoro at school and she became scared. It was so bad that even at home she couldn't sleep at night. She kept having nightmares of Mr. Ayesoro. Now, when her mother, Mrs. Mary Ladele, complained about the situation to the school transferred Mr. Ayesoro from the school to Stardom Hub, another branch of business that the school owned. They did that to ensure that Bibi's mom did not withdraw both Bibi and her siblings from the school. So to ensure continued patronage from Bibi's parents, Mr. Ayesoro had to be transferred. Now, this chapter touches on the challenges involved in running schools. He also lightly touched on the subpar healthcare system in Nigeria, as well as the rising issue of family mistrust. The issue of DNA checks for children is increasing, and this chapter touched a little on it. Now let's look at some questions, some practice questions on this chapter drawn from the O3 Schools JAMB app. So let's attempt some of these practice questions. First, we have what caused the problem between Mr. and Mrs. Ignatius. The DNA test that revealed that one of the children did not belong to Mr. Ignatius caused a rift between both of them. What was Mr. Ibe's job? Mr. Ibe is still Mr. Ignatius. Mr. Ignatius Ibe. So his job was, he was a manager in an oil firm. Why do people avoid government hospitals? People avoided government hospitals because they are overcrowded, leaving the doctors overwhelmed. So most people avoid them. Why couldn't Bibi sleep? She was scared of Mr. Ayesoro and she kept having nightmares of him. What happened to Mr. Ayesoro when Bibi's parents made a report at the school? In order to ensure Bibi's parents' continued patronage, Mr. Ayesoro was transferred from the school to another branch of business owned by the same school. He was transferred to Stardom Home. Now, these are just a few questions from this chapter that I pulled out from the O3 Schools JAMB app. If you are yet to download the app, please go to Play Store, download the app. You can have access to more questions that you can use in practicing after you must have read the book.